Helping us out and joining us for Talent Month.
No problem, Gary. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
So, who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
Perfect. So yeah, my name is Farrell, as you said. I'm BIM manager here at Flynn Contractors. Yeah, I suppose like my background, I suppose when I went to college, I went to DIT, now known as TUD. Originally an architectural technologist. I suppose my first job there was with BDP, where a lot of the work I was working on the National Children's Hospital, and a lot of that job was actually BIM aspects. And I suppose that's when I fell in love with it, to be honest with you. I knew that was the road I wanted to go down. BAM was the main contractor on that. I had a lot of experience working with them and seeing actually what they did in coordination meetings and seeing how they actually took the BIM model and made it into a construction model and the work around all the meetings that took place. And yeah, it's kind of that's how I fell in love with it, to say. So
Not
yeah, it
a,
was definitely good.
not a three-letter acronyms in there.
Yeah.
So I'll bring you slightly back to DIT or TUD as it is now, the Technology University. Why did you, or what did you think you were going to do as an architectural technician versus what you actually do? I'd love to know the difference between the perception and the actual.
Yeah. Yeah, to be honest with you, when I was going into TUD DIT back then, Dublin Institute of Technology, doing architectural technology, I knew it was more about the actual science of the building. Like I wasn't fully complete on doing architectural design. There was more structural, how everything comes together, detailing, the weathering type of stuff, all that type of thing. I thought that that was more interesting than design itself.
Hmm.
Something that I was always interested in. I suppose like during then the college, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of detail and seeing how buildings come together, I suppose, instead of actually designing it. And then another part of that was then the building information modeling. Now, something that I'd never heard of, I suppose, before I went to college. I thought it was all CAD. But I suppose Maliki Matthews, who was the lecturer in there, I suppose like introduced us all to building information management and showed us what it can actually do compared to CADs. And I
Yeah.
just thought it was unbelievable. To be honest, it's just like a video game, John away. Everything is just it's unbelievable and something that I was very interested in. I
Yeah.
suppose like even in college, I guess like when we were doing our assignments, like one part would be BIM, another part would be doing detail, and like there'd be all different aspects of it. But I always put my hand up to make sure that I was doing the building information management because I just thought it was always more interesting.
And it
So
becomes a passion then. And with
yeah,
passion, as is often said, you don't know whether you're working or whether you're actually just pursuing a passion.
yeah, that's it. And I suppose like my day to day now at the moment, it's I know like a lot of people would say like, oh, find a job that you love, and
Yeah.
luckily enough I have. Like it doesn't seem like a job. It's just you're going in, you're doing something that you like. And at the end of the day, it's rewarding as well, seeing the building actually getting built and there's no actually clashes on site, which is definitely a good feat at the end.
So BIM, BIM, I hear so much about it, and you've absolutely categorically clarified one of the points that I often hear because people do throw it in with it's just an acceleration of the old draftsman drawn,
Yeah,
but it's an awful lot more than that, isn't it? It's looking inside the materials nearly, isn't it? It's bringing it all together in a graphical. And
yeah.
I'd love to know whether um are you a graphical guy? Were you an artistic guy? Were you sort of more interested in pictures than numbers, or how did
Yeah,
you?
it's kind of 50-50 to be honest. Like when I was a kid, I loved doing arts. I loved like even when I was a kid, I loved doing like the architectural side. I think then as I got older, I suppose it was more about like the technological side, I suppose, the technical side of it, of how everything comes together. Like, yeah, I think with BIM, it's more like collaborative approach. I think with architecture, I know you're with architects, and a small part of that is working with structural engineers, of course, and M&E. But when it comes to like an architectural technologies side person or the type of BIM, it's more the whole scope of the whole construction team as opposed to just looking at one aspect. like especially with building information management, like you look at the architecture, but you still need to look at how the M&E systems come on board, the structural engineers feeding into that and making sure that everyone is working collaboratively. I think that's why I enjoy it so much.
And we had it actually on one of the other shows. We're talking about this sort of idea that from too early a young age, we're told we're a left side of the brain type of person or we're a right
Yeah,
brain. And actually, hopefully, you're another demonstrable evidence that you can use a bit of both.
that's it. Yeah.
You can use a bit of both, and you shouldn't allow
Mhm.
yourself to be told by your career guidance, oh, you're good at art, therefore you should only look at this.
Yeah,
Actually, try and find something that could probably be a combination.
exactly. And that's it. I suppose like the only way you can learn that is going in and actually doing that. The only way, like I suppose, like as you said, like mine was more about doing the art and doing the drawings, the fancy drawings and all that. But when you actually go and do it as a job or study, you find out that like even though you do still love that, like the other part of it is actually more interesting. So yeah, I'd never cut off something for the sake of it that you're told by somebody else that you'd enjoy it more. I think it's all about experience. I think it's about you throwing yourself into that and seeing how you find it.
And the other, such a young age, I didn't realize that collaboration and emotional intelligence and all these other things and skills are often more important than what you know.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, 100%.
And you said you're working with what? You're working with maybe six or seven different types of professional to bring
Yeah,
a representation, and each
that's
one
it.
has a title, but they're a different type of personality. How do you? Is that only experience as well? Where you learn the different types of person?
Yeah, I think so. I think like when you're, I think, well, recently now everything is over Teams, but I suppose when I go back to like the Children's Hospital, a lot of the meetings would have been on site. Everybody's sitting around the table and you see everybody's personalities, what they actually, what drives them, I suppose, from their point of view. I think that's good. I think that's something that's missed now in Teams. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people leave their camera off. It's very hard to read their face when they're talking to you. I think when you're around the table and you see I think like when like even when it comes to BIM, I think a lot of people are like stuck down one point, whereby like, oh, we're not moving this. And I think when you're around the table, it can be easily worked around. But when you're over Teams and somebody says that to you, I think a lot of people take that as a personal attack when
Oh,
it's not really, do you know that way? I
that's
think it's just their thoughts on
an interesting observation that you make
it.
because humans should be close to humans when you're talking, particularly difficult stuff
Yeah,
requires body language, and you might have been talking to the guy you have a challenge with about his favorite football team 3 minutes, 5 minutes before. What we used to call water cooler bullshit, you know.
exactly. Yeah, and that's it. That's how you build relationships. You know that way.
I think so because otherwise
Yeah.
you get onto a call and it's all about work, and
Yeah, that's it. Mhm.
and you haven't earned the right sort of to say to a guy, oh well, you probably like football. This is the way that we do it, you know, analogies and stuff, because you don't know any of that background. Can I ask you one question, which is maybe an evolution of BIM? I'm not sure, but I see an awful lot of chit chat around the place about digital twins. Uh,
Yeah.
could you just explain? So, like, obviously, that's is that an evolution of BIM, or is that part of BIM, or is that BIM itself? I don't know the answer.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I think when digital twins, when you ask everybody, it's completely different answers to everybody. That's what I found. Like I'm doing a master's in BIM now at the moment. Yeah, I'm doing a master's in BIM at the moment, and I think even when you talk to people that's in that and digital twin, and they answer a question, you're like, oh well, do you know what? I think it's completely different than what you think. Do you know, I think it's a broad scope when it comes to digital twin. For me personally, I see digital twin as BIM. I think that's the whole reason for BIM. I think the model itself should incorporate all the data of what it's actually going to be, as opposed to like pre-construction. I think at the moment, what I've found anyway is that like when you think of BIM, it's more about coordination, collaboration, making sure that there's no clashes on site, but you're still missing out a lot of things that would be representative of the building itself when it's actually running. And that's why I see digital twin as like all that information should be feeding back into the model. And I suppose like even doing the lessons learned off the digital twin that you've done and bring that on to the next project, I think
Okay.
that's something that's missed at the moment.
But
But
it is,
hopefully,
but I
yeah.
guess as you go through a phase of, physical draftsmanship into CAD and BIM, it's all evolving.
Oh
And
yeah. Referee.
exactly, but it's often hard, and particularly when you throw in marketing people or people who are selling products. There's,
Yeah.
after you've bought your BIM, uh, if you call it just BIM 2.0, you don't get that same. So they call it something else, and they
That's
can
it. Yeah.
call it
That's
digital
it.
1.0.
Mm.
What's that? So
Acronyms everywhere.
you talk about acronyms in data center industry, pharmaceutical industry, finance, but we fall into that ourselves all the time.
Mm.
So I'm getting a sense of a typical day. I'm getting a great sense of sort of how you started and you navigated to balancing both sides of the brain. What do you not like so much?
Good question.
If you'd
I'm not
imagine
sure.
wand, that definitely I need that.
Yeah. What don't I like? Jesus. I'm not sure. I think the hard part, I suppose, with BIM is getting everyone to feed into it, getting everyone to accept it, I suppose. I think that's the hard,
An interesting point. Is that about behaviors or sure, we've always done it that way, it'll be grand,
that's
or
it. Yeah.
is that it?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. I think with a lot of the older generations, and I think it's going to happen to me at some point when something new comes on board as well. But I think when you've done it for so long, you've seen it work.
Right.
I think it's harder for you than from me personally to come along and say, "Oh, we should do it this way or that way." And yeah, people will always, I suppose, push back and say like, "Oh, why should we do that?" And like that's a good conversation to have because not everything in BIM we should be using anyway. John, way as you said yourself, there's a lot of people out there selling stuff for the sake of it. But yeah, no, I think that's the hardest part. But at the same time, like I think with Flynn, even personally, like since I joined here, anything that I've put forward like they've kind of ran with it, you know, in a way. So I think it just depends on the company that you're there. And I think once your company buys into BIM, that's a big part of it, I suppose.
My father was a mechanic, and he often used to talk to me about the resistance to the pneumatic um, drills and stuff.
Yeah,
He'd say, "Well, what's wrong with doing this?" All
exactly. Yeah. Mm,
coming alongside because you can do five of them and you don't know.
yeah,
So I think change is often just fear.
that's it. Yeah.
It can be fear, it can be
And I think I found that a lot with like architects companies. So when we get in tenders, I say, or like we're working on jobs, a lot of architects send over CAD drawings and they're reluctant to send the actual BIM model itself because they're afraid that you're going to rip it apart and go back to them and say it's wrong or put costing against it. You know the way that's always a hard part as well. But I think that's something that's been happening. But I think over the next few years, I think that's just it's just going to move on as it does with every part of sector. You know, every sector embraces change, and I think construction needs to do the same.
exceptions today become the norms tomorrow. I mean, who
That's
would
it.
mention it earlier? Who would have thought that 90% of your meetings are on Zoom now? Three,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you
that's
know,
it. Yeah,
than bad. I really have enjoyed this chat with you because I think for such a young man to realize so early that all the skills and tools that are great and wonderful are your new set of shiny tools, but it's the human
yeah,
that you present, and you could have to present the same set of shiny tools six different ways to six different people to
that's it.
bring them along. And I think it's wonderful to see such a ish career person understanding that early.
Mm,
Because
yeah,
guess what? The tools are going to change, but people's behavior is pretty predictable.
that's it. Yeah,
Uh,
100%. That's why you learn very quickly when you go into construction.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
So, Dean, it's been short and sharp, but it's been interesting. Thank you so much for your time.
No,
Um,
thanks, Gary.
learned a lot, and I hope the viewers do as well. So, thank you so much.
Perfect. Cheers. Thanks, Gary.